Good morning everybody, and welcome to a little extra vlog as promised. I said I would do a vlog that was just talking about the green card process. So here I am to talk about the green card, and here it is, the infamous green card. This is mine. So if you're not interested in the green card talk, then maybe this video isn't for you, and if you are, then welcome. And I'm going to try not to waffle and try and keep it completely factual, but just please remember that number one, I'm not an immigration lawyer, and this is specific to our journey and our specific visa as well. So I'm going to try and include everything and include the costs as I go along, the different steps, because there was costs like as you move along the process. And I hope you enjoy it. Sit at the computer. It's probably the easiest place to talk to you. I've got my notes so I don't forget anything. Okay, so number one, our visa is an EB2 National Interest Waiver Visa, and that's a type of visa where you can apply before you get a job offer. I know lots and lots of visas you have to have a job offer first or be sponsored through a potential company. That's not the case for pilots. Jason is a pilot, if you haven't already guessed that. Okay, so I'll take you right back to the very beginning. So back in August 2021, I was in England. Jason was in Qatar working. I was always spending summers in England, and he called me one day and said a colleague of his at work had told him that pilots were eligible to apply for a green card. Now, I've always wanted to live in the US since I was little, been coming here since I was 8, but never ever thought it would be at all possible because I knew how hard it was to get a visa. So I was like, you know, when like a light bulb goes off in your head, I was like, we have to apply. So we went back to Qatar ready for the start of the school year, and we started to discuss it, and we realised that we had to sort of go for it. We'd lived in Qatar 8 years by that point, 8 years. And we knew that it wasn't forever. We had to have something else, and you couldn't stay there forever even if you wanted to. So we decided that we were going to do it. So first off, we briefly looked at the paperwork that you needed to do. You can file the application yourself. You don't have to go through an immigration lawyer. But we quickly decided that we weren't capable we probably were capable of filling in the forms, but were you capable of putting in the correct details to make sure that this was successful? So we decided we needed an immigration lawyer. We started looking around. One of them that we contacted, you have like a video call with them first, and one of them that we contacted, he wasn't familiar with the process with pilots because it was relatively new, so he basically said that he wouldn't want to work with us. That's fine. Then I found another one on Instagram. They posted quite a lot, and they'd posted about a pilot's success story. So we contacted them. We had a video call with them. So it was me and Jason sat speaking to this lawyer in the US, and he sounded all positive. Yeah, this is great, till he told us the price. I think he quoted us something like $25,000. I nearly fell off the chair, because we knew it was going to be expensive, but we didn't think that expensive for the lawyer. So then we looked around, and then another colleague of Jason's recommended the one that we eventually went with, which was AG Immigration. And they were based in, I think they've got offices all over, but ours was specifically the Las Vegas office. And the price for the lawyer was $13,500. That was their fee to basically fill all the forms in and do the work that was needed. That does not include any fees that the US government have for the filing of the visa. So the $13,500 was an upfront payment. There's no payment plan or anything like that. It's upfront. So you basically kiss goodbye to that money, because you can either get accepted or a rejection. If you get rejected, you've paid the lawyer. That's just unlucky. You've lost that money. So you have to be committed, because you're handing over money straight away. So I think we chose it was around the October time that we made the decision that's the lawyer that we were going for. So then fast forward about 3 to 4 months, and that's what it took them to put the file together. Now the file comprises of basically your life on paper, everything from, it was mainly about Jason's work, because to apply for the EB2 national interest waiver, you have to qualify for a certain amount of criteria. I've got some criteria here. I've had lots of questions on what kind of criteria qualifies. And Jason qualified under exceptional ability. So one of the criteria is if you have certain degrees, bachelorette degrees, further education. Jason doesn't have anything like that. So he was a subcategory, which was exceptional ability. So the description of that is you must be able to show exceptional ability in the sciences, art or business. Exceptional ability means a degree of expertise significantly above the ordinary encountered in the sciences, art or business. You must meet any requirements specific by the labour certification as applicable. And you need the evidence to support that as well. And some of the evidence that you need to support that is official records showing if it is a degree or a diploma or any other kind of awards from college, university, school or any other institute relating to your exceptional ability. Letters from your current or former employers documenting the last 10 years of full-time experience in your occupation. Now we had a slight problem with this because, like I say, we'd been at Qatar Airways it would have been just over 8 years at this point, and he needed to prove 10 years. Before that he worked for EasyJet for like 15 years, so we knew that wasn't a problem. He'd been employed for 10 years, but the problem was we found it extremely hard to get the information from EasyJet. Apparently they only keep on record for something like 7 years or something, and it took contacting people on LinkedIn like Fleet Manager, people like that. I even contacted my old boss. We were sort of getting desperate to get that information from them. He contacted HR. They basically just weren't interested. It was like, oh, we don't keep any records that you've worked there for 15 years. Anyway, we did eventually get the information that we need, but it was through the chief pilot, through LinkedIn, that we contacted personally. Then you need the license to practice. So Jason, at the time, he held a Qatari flying license, which isn't sufficient because you need the FAA license. So he actually booked to do that, and that was enough to say that he could apply. Evidence of your salary, membership in a professional association. I found this one a bit strange, but he wasn't a member of any kind of flying club or anything, but he joined one and they accepted that. He joined AOPA. I think it was something like $70 a year to join, and they were fine with that. Any recognition of your achievements or significant contributions to your industry by your peers, government entitled, professional or business organisation. So with that, he used references from colleagues of his, or letters of recommendation is probably a better word. He got a few of his colleagues or close colleagues to write some letters of recommendations, which they done a fantastic job. The solicitor or the lawyer does give you an outline of what you need to write and what it needs to include, but they were all absolutely amazing, their letters of recommendation. So once you've got all of this information together, as well as, like I say, your life on paper, then they put the file together, and I've actually got the file here. Just grab it from behind the computer, and this is our file. This is what they put together. I mean, it's about 300 pages. That is everything that we've ever done in our life, and to prove that we've got no criminal record or, everything like that. It's all in here. So the file was eventually submitted to the UCIS on the 22nd of February 22, all the twos, so we'll never forget that date. And the fee to file that was $700. Now, we had a little bit of a problem with paying these fees because we didn't have a US credit card. We don't know anybody with a US credit card apart from asking a complete stranger. And unfortunately, what we realised is they don't think anything outside of the US exists. It was like, oh, you don't have a US credit card, you don't have a US address. Well, no, I'm applying for a US visa, so I don't live there yet. So we had to transfer money to the lawyer, and the lawyer then paid the fees for us. So if you had decided to file the forms yourself, I don't know how you would have got around that because you couldn't pay any other way than a US card. So that was the 22nd of February 2022. And then on May the 10th, so just a few months later, I'll never forget, I was upstairs ironing and Jason came upstairs. You get an app and it tells you the progress of your file. And Jason showed me the app and said, we've been approved. I was like, what? We weren't expecting to hear for months because the lawyer said, just like buckle down. You're not going to hear anything for a long time. This process can take up to 24 months. So just sort of, you filed it, forget about it. And having it only 3 months later, having the approved on the app was a major boost. We were really excited. We were like, oh my God, it's happening. I was practically had the suitcases out, but I was way ahead of my time. So once it was approved, you then wait for that paperwork, and it is in paper form as well. You wait for that paperwork to go to the NVC, the National Visa Centre, and then that's the next stage. So on the 10th of May, found out it was approved, and then that was it. Radio silence for 7 months. Nothing, not one piece of contact whatsoever. And by the time we were getting to like 5-6 months, we were thinking, oh, the file's been lost. What's happening? We asked the lawyer. He said, no, it's normal. Just sit back. You'll hear something eventually. And then one thing I did find really helpful I couldn't find any vlogs that explained the process or explained how long you would wait. I couldn't find anything, but what I did find was a website called My Visa Journey, and it's forums of people who were applying for many, many, many different visas, but there's forums for specific ones. And I got chatting to quite a few people in there. Somebody set up a spreadsheet of where everybody was, what date you'd applied, what date you'd been approved, when you next heard from them. And I just found it really helpful. It didn't help our process, but it was just a comfort to see that other people were waiting that long as well. So that's My Visa Journey. If anybody has gone through it, I would recommend signing up to that. It's free. You didn't have to pay anything for it. So after the silence for 7 months, waiting for the file to be sent to the National Visa Centre, eventually, November 2022, they received the file. So it updated on the app that they'd received the file. And then you wait for a welcome letter. So the NVC then send you a welcome letter to say, welcome to the visa process. This is what the next steps are. So we then waited for the letter for 4 months. So another 4 months of not hearing anything at all. We eventually got the welcome letter, and then along with that came a load more paperwork to fill in. There was this questionnaire that was about 10 pages long, and every single question on it was just asking if we were a terrorist in about 10 different ways of asking. They were asking, were we part of this group? And it was an abbreviated name. I was like, I don't know what that is. It was obviously some kind of cult or some kind of terrorist group. Anyway, we obviously just clicked no. Then we had to get police checks. Now, because we lived in Qatar and we'd obviously lived in the UK previously, we had to get both police checks. The Qatar one was extremely easy to get and very cheap. The UK one for both of us came to about $150. And once we got all of that paperwork together, you then had to file all of those documents back in. And to file those documents, we had to pay the fee times 3 because there's 3 of us on the application. And that was another $1,035. Again, had to be paid through the lawyer. So we submitted those documents on the 11th of March 2023, and then you basically wait for them to, they call it DQ, which is documentary qualified. So you wait for them to tell you that all of your documents are correct, okay, that's exactly what they want, and they don't need any other documents from you. So we eventually got documentary qualified on the 4th of April, which did only take 24 days from submitting the paperwork, which is fantastic. I know a lot of people on the forum that I was on, they were asked for more information, so they had to file more documents, which then puts more time on it. We were really lucky; the documents were correct the first time, and we weren't asked for anything else. So that's the 4th of April 2023. We're up to now. Then was now the wait for the interview letter. So you have to go for an interview at your local or your country's US embassy. Now again, we lived in Qatar, which was really beneficial to us because Doha is a very small city. So you can get everywhere within about 30 minutes. So we live really close to the embassy. I mean, if we'd have been at home, we're from the northeast of England, we'd have certainly had to travel to London because there is no US embassy in the north of England, that's for sure. So you have to factor that in, that when you get the interview date, you have to be there. It doesn't matter what other plans you've got, you need to be at that interview. So we waited for the interview letter, and in the meantime, we knew we needed a medical. All three of us, again, have to have a medical. Doesn't matter how old you are, you have to have a medical. And we had to have the medical within 6 months of the interview. So you can't really go for the medical until you know when your interview is going to be. So we got the interview and it was then scheduled for September the 20th. So I'll go back. We got documentary qualified on the 4th of April, and then it wasn't until September that we got our interview date. Now again, we lived in Doha, so the interview wait length was very short. Some places, you can see this information online on the actual NVC website. It posts the estimated wait time for interviews. I mean, again, if we were in London, we would have waited a lot longer for an interview. If you're in some places, like if you're Brazilian or Indian or anything like that, the wait is in years. So you just sit in a queue waiting for that interview, and your visa will not process any further until you've had that interview. So we were very lucky in that term as well. So once we got the interview date for the 20th of September, we knew we needed the medical. So we booked the medical. It has to be at an approved clinic. There was only one in Qatar that was approved. It doesn't tell you how much it's going to cost. Maybe as if you were in the UK, the website might be a bit better and tell you how much a visa medical would cost. But we just turned up on the day. We were there for hours. We had to go to all of the different sections. It was an eye exam, it was a hearing test, a blood test. What was the other thing we were tested for? Oh, there was multiple things. And then they ask for what immunisations you've received in your life. All three of us needed 3 extra shots. They weren't the same shots, but all three of us needed 3 extra each. So you have to have those because the visa requirements say you must have these. You don't have them, you don't get in. It's simple. You've got no choice. So the medical come to about $1,400. It was actually a bit of a joke. We were going to all of the different departments and we were paying separately as we went around, and we just were laughing because it was just hand the card over. I was thinking, God, how much is this going to cost? But again, you've got no choice. So that was the medical done. Luckily, we all had to have a chest x-ray. Zara didn't have to have a chest x-ray because of her age, but she had to have this extra tuberculosis test, which was about an extra $50, more than that anyway, because of her age, whereas we just had a chest x-ray, which was a lot cheaper anyway, whatever. So then the next was waiting for the 20th of September, and it was interview day. So you go along to the embassy. Again, all three of you have to go. Luckily, Jason was off work. You go along to the embassy. You get there. you have to go through a certain point of checks. You're not allowed to take any mobile phones or any devices whatsoever, no Apple Watch, nothing in it all. They took off me like a lip balm or something in my purse. You were allowed to take food and drink in as long as it was scanned, because it does say that you can be in there for a long time. And we were in there for, I think, a total of about 3 hours. So you go into this room, it wasn't what I expected at all. You go into this room and it's got loads of windows. I can only describe it as like a post office, that you were waiting to be served at that window, and there was some seating. It wasn't a very big room, so you can hear everything that's going on. And there's all these families sat there in exactly the same position as you, waiting to see if you're going to get this visa. Because even though you were approved for the visa back over a year ago, that immigration officer at that desk has got the right to say yes or no. So you haven't got it in your hand, and until you've got it in your hand, it's all up in the air. So you were watching these people get called. You could see the tension, the nerves, and people like, you can tell when people are doing exactly what they're being told. It's quite funny, really, because you're so frightened of saying anything wrong. Or Zara was told before we went in, you remain quiet until you don't speak until you're spoken to, sort of thing. We went to the first window, they took our fingerprints, asked us a few questions, asked for a couple of documents, and then were told to sit down again. Then we waited a long time to be called up to the final window. We got called up, and the guy has that file that I've just showed you. He has that file, and he's like this at the desk. And he said, okay, so blah, blah. He asked us a couple of questions, didn't ask Zara anything, I think he only asked me like one question or something like that. And he just went, okay, you're all set, blah, 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 and off you go. And I was thinking, was that it? I was expecting a, yes, you can have the visa, no, you can't. There was nothing like definitive. And we were like, oh my God, right, okay, is that it? Then there was a bit of a palaver over the passport, because they're supposed to take your passports away from you. Well, obviously Jason is a pilot. He had, I think, the next day off, but then he was meant to be at work. And it was all a bit, you don't want to tell the company that you're working for that you're applying for this visa, because especially in Qatar, if anybody's ever worked in the Middle East, basically they can just sack you for anything. There's no laws about anything like that in that country. So it was like all a bit like, how long is the passport going to be? I'm a pilot. And the guy was really good. He just said, look, let me try and get this done by tomorrow. Come back at 1:00, and was like, well, do we need an appointment? And he said, no, just come back at 1:00 and the passports will be ready for you. And we did, and they were ready for us. And that was it. That was the visa, stamped in our passport, a temporary one, like a sticker. That was it. We were green card holders. I'm saying that was it, but this is, it took a long time. So this was September. So then the next issue we had was that you then have 1 year to enter the country and activate the visa. So they don't actually post the card out until you've activated the visa. So that's okay. You can wait, and you can wait until you decide to move there in 6 months' time. That's okay if you want to do that. The problem was 10 days after the interview date, on the 30th of September, me and Jason were going to New York because it was our 10th wedding anniversary a few days later. So we already had this trip planned. It just wasn't timed very well at all. My mum and dad were coming to Qatar to look after Zara, so she didn't have to miss any school, and we were going to New York, and we were going on a cruise. So then the panic set in, thinking, well, me and Jason are going to enter the country, but Zara's not. So I'm frantically trying to ring somebody to find the answer. The problem is nobody ever answers the phone on these visa things. Couldn't really get the answer of whether the two of us could enter and not Zara. Would that affect the visa? And it just, I was stressed a bit over it. We couldn't cancel the holiday. It was too late. We would have lost every penny on the cruise. And even though we work for Qatar Airways and we got fantastic staff travel, we'd booked flights with American Airlines because we knew we needed to be on that cruise ship. And the staff travel was sometimes a bit iffy going to America, whether you'd get on or not. So we didn't want to take that risk. So we'd spent thousands on this holiday. So in a moment of madness, I was like, we're going to have to take Zara with us, but she wasn't booked on the cruise. So I thought, right, let's book her on the flight to New York. So we booked her on the flight, and then I rang my mum and dad. I have the most amazing mum and dad in the world who would just do anything for us. And I rang my mum and dad and said, I know you're coming to Qatar in like a week. I'm going to need to change the plans. I'm going to need to fly you to New York. You're going to have to stay there for a couple of nights and then fly to Qatar with Zara so we can go on the cruise. And my mum was like, yeah, okay, no problem. Just let me know where we need to be. So we had to book my mum and dad a flight from Manchester to New York. And we booked a hotel, a room for them, a room for us for a couple of nights. And yeah, so 10 days later, we all go to New York. We get there. And you get to the passport control, and she said, they give you this brown paper envelope, and it says, do not open. It's for that immigration officer to open when you enter the country. So we're like, right. So we turns up, we had the 3 envelopes, gets to the counter, and she said, oh, where are you going to be living? And we were like, oh, Florida. She went, oh, what are you doing in New York? We said, well, we're here for a holiday, but we've just entered the country. And her face sort of changed, and she was like, well, why are you entering the country now? Why don't you just enter? And we were like, because this holiday was already booked. Oh, right. And I was thinking, my heart was coming out of my chest, thinking, what's wrong? I don't understand. I was looking at like Jason's face and Zara's face and thinking, oh my God. And she was like, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that. I would have just entered, when you moved here or whatever. But she said, whatever. And she stamped the thing, took the envelopes off us. They were for her to keep. And that was it. We'd entered the country. And I was like, we all were like, oh my God, this is just so stressful. Anyway, Mum and Dad arrived. We went off on a cruise and they flew back to Qatar. That was it. So we get home from our holiday. About 2 weeks later, we got a email letter, and Jason said, look at this email I've just got. It said an appointment has been made for you it was about something like 6 days' time. An appointment has been made for you in 6 days in Las Vegas for biometrics. We were like, what do you mean, biometrics? So I get on the phone, finally managed to speak to somebody, and she said, oh yeah, it's for your fingerprints for your green card. I was like, well, we've already had our fingerprints took. They'd done them at the embassy when we went for our interview last month. No, they're not on file. Right, okay. I said, well, can we not do it at the embassy? No, I'm sorry, it has to be done in the US. I was like, she said, are you not already in the US? No. I said, we're in the Middle East, it's a long way away. I said, we've actually just come home from the US. Oh, well, I'm really sorry, there's nothing I can do. She said, you can move the appointment, she said, but we can only book 3 weeks in advance. So you would need to know that you can be here within 3 weeks. She said, and you can also change the appointment. It doesn't have to be in Las Vegas. We have biometric centres all over the US, so you can go wherever you want. There's an online system, you can change the appointment. Oh, right, okay. So we were racking our brains thinking, there's just no way we can be in Las Vegas in 5 days' time. We just can't. It's about a 17-hour flight away. Jason didn't have any time off work. So we managed to change the appointment. He had 5 days off work coming up in, like, say, 2.5 weeks' time. We managed to change the appointment. We randomly picked Chicago. We'd never been before. We thought, well, if we have to go to the US, let's go to Chicago. It was a slightly shorter flight and only one flight from Doha as well. Qatar Airways flew direct. So within about an hour, we had a holiday booked to Chicago. And we flew all the way there, lovely 15-hour flight. And we went to the appointment, turned up. They said, oh, we'll separate you. I see somebody on my own and Jason and Zara see somebody on their own. Yeah, okay, no problem. So we get called. sits down in the chair. There was a camera in front of me. She said, I'm just going to take your picture. Yeah, okay. And then she gathers the paperwork together, gives me the paperwork and said, there you go, you're done. And I could see exactly the same happening to Jason, like across the room. I said, oh, I thought we'd come for our biometrics, our fingerprints done. No, they're already on the system. So I was like, what? Okay then. So we'd flew all the way to Chicago for our picture took. We just walked out and we were like, again, just laughed. Because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. But there was nothing we could do. We were that deep into the process. There was no way you were going to say, no, we can't make that appointment. We can't do it. You just can't, you can't do that. So we got the photo taken, and then that was the last point. So then after that, we had to pay for them to post the green cards out to us, which was $660. And all of these fees are minus any DHL fees that we sent paperwork backwards and forwards to the lawyer, which was numerous different occasions. Jason's arrived first in the post on its own. And again, I was in a mild panic thinking, well, where's mine and Zara's? Why hasn't it come through? And then in the end, mine and Zara's eventually arrived. I got that text message from DHL to say, a package has arrived for you. I was at that DHL office as fast as anything. It was just, yeah. So this took just over 2 years, like 2 years, 2.5 years it took from start to finish, from deciding that we were going to do it to eventually getting that visa in our hand. And the total cost, I know I've been rambling and adding money up, but the total cost to get the visa was around about $18,200. Like I say, that is minus any DHL fees, and that is certainly minus any trip fees, which technically was like 1.5 trips, a trip that me and Jason already had booked, but we then had to add Zara on it and my mum and dad, and then the trip to Chicago. So if anybody is going to do this, you need to have the money there to be able to do it, because, or maybe do it on credit cards or something like that. I don't know. There's all sorts of different fees, and you never know when they're going to ask you for different fees either. I suppose the biggest one is the outlay for the lawyer at the beginning. So that was the process. I've probably rambled on for way too long. I can see I've been talking for half an hour already. I hope I haven't bored you, and I hope I've been, I hope it's explained as much as possible. I have had lots of questions about who would qualify for this particular visa. Like I said earlier, it is to do with exceptional ability. Even though I know a pilot isn't really exceptional ability, but they do have a pilot shortage, so therefore it fell under the bracket of this visa. It hasn't been like that forever. Like I say, it was quite new. When we first found out about it, it only sort of been going on for about 6 months. We were one of the first in Qatar Airways to do it. So many pilots from there have done it. Unfortunately, Jason does have a colleague who was rejected at the beginning. It's a massive risk. I'm trying to think of what other questions I've had. I've had so many questions, but hopefully I've answered most of them here, of how we got a green card, and that is exactly how we got it. Do I think we've been lucky? Yes. Has it helped that we were British, because that does matter? Yes. Does it help that we were close to the interview place? Yes. When I look back, I think we found it stressful with all the different wait times. But then when I look back, I think it did fall into place for us, and we're here. What more can we ask for? So good luck if anybody is applying. And like I say, please ask me any questions if I forgot anything. Anyway, I'll be back on Saturday with my usual weekly vlog. Thanks for watching. Bye.